I spent 10 years working in a golden factory to save my younger sister. I found her final letter and realized I was working for her ghost. In the early 1920s, in the rural mountains of Japan, my family was starving. The rice harvests had failed 3 years in a row. My father was desperate. One afternoon, a man in a silk suit arrived at our village. He offered a contract of light. He said the massive silk factories in the city needed young, nimble hands. If I went to work for 10 years, the factory would pay for my younger sister's education and my parents' medical bills. I was 14. My sister, Hannah, was only 7. She was the light of my life. I signed the paper with a thumbprint of ink. The man promised that the factory was a paradise with clean beds and hot meals. He said Hannah would receive a letter and a small sum of money every month to prove I was doing well. I boarded the train, waving to Hannah until she was a tiny dot on the horizon. I told her, I'm going to spin a future for us out of silk. The paradise was a factual nightmare. The silk mills were massive, windowless brick buildings where the air was thick with boiling steam and the smell of raw cocoons. Here is the factual reality of the silk reeling industry. To extract the silk, the cocoons have to be kept in basins of boiling water. We had to dip our bare hands into the scalding water for 14 hours a day to find the end of the silk thread. Our fingers became permanently blistered and raw. The humidity was so high that tuberculosis, what we called the white plague, spread through the dormitories like wildfire. I worked through the pain, through the coughing fits, and through the exhaustion. Every month I was shown a ledger that said a portion of my salary had been sent to Hannah. I was shown letters from her, written in a shaky, childish hand, telling me she was top of her class and that the doctors were helping our mother. Those letters were the only thing that kept me from jumping into the machinery. 10 years later, my contract was up. I was 24, my body was broken, and my lungs were scarred by the steam. I traveled back to our village, carrying a small silk dress I had made for Hannah. I expected to find a young woman, a scholar, someone who had benefited from my decade of suffering. I found my father sitting on the same porch where I had left him. He looked like he had aged 50 years. When I asked for Hannah, he didn't speak. He just handed me a small, rusted tin box. Inside were all the letters I had written to Hannah over the years. They had never been opened. The twist was a lie that spanned a decade. Hannah hadn't gone to school. She had died of the same fever that took our mother just 6 months after I left. The factory recruiter knew that if I found out, I would stop working or run away. So for 10 years, the factory owners had hired a clerk to forge letters from Hannah. They used the education fees to pay for their own luxury cars, while I was boiling my hands to save a girl who was already in the ground. I wasn't spinning a future. I was spinning a shroud. The factory hadn't just stolen my youth. They had used my love for my sister as a tether to keep me in the steam. I stood in the graveyard holding the silk dress, realizing that the most expensive fabric in the world isn't made of silk. It's made of the time you can never get back.